Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's NFL Rundown. We're going to go over the Week 11 games in the NFL, starting with the Thursday night game, ending with the Monday Night Football contest. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Helps us out a ton. Don't forget to put your football plays in the comments section below. And of course, if you're looking for my best bets, you can always find those at Pickdawgz Premium. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the Week 11 games in the NFL. First up, it's your Thursday night football game on Prime Video between the Tennessee Titans and the Green Bay Packers. This one we see Green Bay laying 3 points and the total's at 41. Now, primetime unders have been really profitable in the NFL this season, but I think this total is set just a little bit too low, and I'm going to take the over in this Titans-Packers game. We saw Green Bay last week have 415 total yards of offense. Now, I know that game went into overtime against the Cowboys, so, a few extra minutes of offense than if it was a standard four-quarter game. But that makes it 3 straight weeks with over 380 total yards for an offense that was really struggling for most of the year. They're running the football very effectively, and now we're starting to see Aaron Rodgers have some chemistry with some receivers in this Green Bay receiving core, including maybe an up-and-coming star in Christian Watson in a breakout performance against the Cowboys. 4 receptions for 107 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a 58-yard touchdown reception in that game. So, I think the Packers offense is in the right direction here. I think it's going in the right direction. But the defense last week struggled a little bit. They gave up 5.1 yards per carry, and on the season they're giving up 4.8 yards per carry. 2 opposing ground games, but you don't want to see that. They also gave up 421 yards, so they got outgained in that game against the Cowboys, and that was a home game at Lambeau Field. So we've seen the Tennessee Titans be able to run the football pretty consistently this season. Derrick Henry having himself a strong year, and the passing game for Tennessee's kind of been inconsistent, whether it's been Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis. So I do think the Titans will rely on their ground game here, and they should be able to move the ball against the Packers' struggling rush defense. So you got a Green Bay offense that's going in the right direction. A defense, it's kind of been a little bit mediocre as of late against the run. I'm going to take the over in this super low total for Thursday Night Football. Next up, we see the Carolina Panthers taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens are 12-point favorites, totals at 43. Big-time double-digit NFL favorites have not really been profitable this season, and we've seen that. We saw that last week in the Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and Commanders. Philadelphia laying 11 points, Commanders with the outright win. So, I'm very hesitant to lay these large numbers, but we see a couple of favorites on the board of double digits, and I actually like both of them, and I like the Ravens in this spot just because they're off a bye week. Their defense is playing outstanding. They're improving in the secondary, and a lot of that was because they were injured early on, but they have, healed up quite nicely and playing outstanding defensively. I mean, you look at the last few weeks, giving up only 243 yards to the Saints in a primetime game on the road. Played very well in the second half defensively against the Buccaneers in another primetime game on the road. Played very well against the Browns. The defense was sharp against the Giants. They just kind of got a little bit unlucky in the end. Lamar threw a really bad interception to lose that game. But overall, this Ravens defense is in good shape. I trust the offense. They can run the football very effectively. And the Carolina Panthers, even though their defense is certainly better than their offense, their defense has given up 362 yards per game, and a lot of that's on the ground. You look at last week against the Atlanta Falcons, even though they won that game in the end, 5.5 yards per carry allowed. The week before, 241 total rushing yards and 6.2 yards per carry. That was the unbelievable week for Joe Mixon, one of the best fantasy football performances really in history of the NFL. So by a running back. So I don't really love to see that when you're facing a Ravens team that likes to run the football, but with both their running back group, which is very talented, and their quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So I think the Ravens are just too much right now. Give me the Baltimore Ravens laying the points, laying the lumber in this one. Next up, we see the other double-digit favorite, as it's going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns. The Bills laying 13 points. Totals at 43. Like I said, I like 2 double-digit favorites this week, and that's the Bills here laying the lumber, as they're coming off a tough loss, a really emotional loss at home. 33-30, some say one of the best games in NFL history, let alone the game of the season, and it was a very entertaining game, but that makes it 2 straight losses for the Bills, but they're still big-time favorites in this spot because they're facing a Browns team that's coming off one of the worst performances by any team in the NFL this season against the Miami Dolphins. That was on the road, and we've seen the Browns struggle a little bit on the road this season, 3 straight road losses. And in that game against Miami, they lost 39-17. They were outgained 491 to 297. could not stop the run, could not stop the pass. They were able to run the football, but when you're down by multiple scores, you're not really able to run the football. You have to throw it quite a bit, and that's just not the game that the Browns want to play. And that's why I worry about them, because we know the Bills should honestly be able to score at will against really any team in the NFL. They've been able to do so most of the season, scoring 28 points per game and over 420 yards per game. So if the Bills go up, by 2 touchdowns or 2 scores, 10-0, 14-0 early, and the Browns are forced to throw the football more often than they would like to, I just don't see them coming back in this game. So for me, I think the Bills win this one in blowout fashion more often than the Browns make it a game. The Browns certainly and we know the NFL any given Sunday, and we've seen plenty of dogs of double digits really scare the favorite. We saw the Commanders with the outright win, but I just don't think this is that spot. Give me the Buffalo Bills laying the points against the Browns. Next up, we see Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are getting 6.5 points at home in this one. Total's at 45. We see the Indianapolis Colts coming off a big-time win with their new head coach in Jeff Saturday, and he's 1-0 as an NFL head coach. And we're going to see the Eagles coming off a loss, like I mentioned, on Monday Night Football. They were laying 11 points. They lost the game outright to the Commanders at home. A tough loss to take, and that's their first loss of the season, so now 8-1 overall. And I've mentioned that the Eagles have been very impressive this season. There's no doubt about that, and they should still be a contender in the NFC, but it goes to show, you look at that strength of schedule. You played the Lions in week 1 on the road. You didn't even cover in that game. Then you played Kirk Cousins in primetime. We know how that usually goes for Kirk Cousins teams. Then you play the Commanders on the road, the Jaguars, the Cardinals. The Cowboys was a tough one, but that was without Dak Prescott. The Steelers, the Houston Texans, and then the Commanders again. This has not really been a strong schedule, and the Colts on the road has probably been one of the tougher games the Eagles are going to have so far this season. And the schedule does get a little bit tougher as the year continues for the Eagles. I do expect them to lose a few of those games on the road against Dallas, maybe even against the New York Giants. But in this spot, I think the Colts are just getting too many points. I like the way the offense looked last week, over 400 yards of offense, and they ran the ball very, very well. 207 total rushing yards, 6.9 yards per carry. Yes, it was against the Raiders, who we know have struggled all season long, basically, but still a strong performance from a team that really didn't have much life left. But here they are now, 4-5-1. They're certainly not dead yet. This is a huge game. If you can grab the outright upset win, you're right back in the AFC playoff race. So I think this is going to be a close game. I like the way the Colts are playing defensively. Give me the 6.5 points here with the home team. Next up, we see the Washington Commanders taking on the Houston Texans. Commanders are laying 3 here. Totals at 40.5. Now, the Washington Commanders are coming off a high-scoring game in their last game, 32-21 over the Eagles, but I actually like the under in this one. The total set pretty low, I think for good reason. When you look at Houston, offensively, this team's only scoring 17 points per game. Now, the last 2 weeks, they've ran the ball very, very well, and Dameon Pierce is having himself a nice rookie campaign. However, even though they ran for the ball for 5.3 yards per carry against the Eagles and Giants, they still only scored 16 and 17 points in those 2 games, and a lot of that's been because they haven't been able to successfully and consistently throw the football. In 2 of the last 3 weeks, they've had under 200 passing yards. Davis Mills has not had a lot of time in the pocket. He's taken 10 sacks in the last 3 games. And I just think this Texans offense is too one-dimensional when you're going up against a Commanders defense that's held 5 of its last 8 opponents to under 100 rushing yards. This is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. They did a good job against the Eagles. They were successful against the Vikings a couple weeks ago. So I don't think the Texans are going to be able to run the ball as much as they would like to. And I don't think they're going to be able to throw the ball because they just haven't been able to consistently in 2022. So I think the Houston Texans really struggle to score here. And on the other side, I don't really trust this Commanders offense. Yes, Taylor Heineke has been a good game manager, but I don't think he's talented enough to really exploit a lot of defenses in the NFL. The Commanders are only averaging 19 points per game, 324 yards per game. They're taking a lot of sacks themselves on 9.1% of their passing plays this season. So I really don't like either of these offenses right now. The Commanders haven't been able to really run the football pretty consistently. So I'm going to take the under in this Commanders-Texans ballgame. Next up, we see the New York Jets taking on the New England Patriots. The Patriots are 3-point favorites in this one. Total is at 38. We've got both teams coming off their bye weeks. The Patriots right now have really just dominated this season series in the last few seasons. In fact, the Jets haven't won a game in this series outright since 2015. And really, they've dominated against the spread as well, New England has. They already covered the number in their first game against the Jets this year. They covered both of the games in 2021. They lost one in 2020. But going back to 2017, the New England Patriots have only failed to cover the number in this season series 3 times. So it just goes to show you how dominant the Patriots have been against the Jets in the last decade or so, and you can even go further than that. But For me, I'm just going to lean towards the under in this one. I think when you look at the Patriots, they're obviously a defense-first team. They're good against the run. They get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But you look at the last 3 weeks, even though they've won 2 of those 3 games, their offense has been held under 300 yards in each of those games. They're not running the football well, and the offensive line's really struggling down the stretch here. Now, they get a bye week. They get some time to recover, but so does the Jets. And the Jets' defense has really held them in this season. It's really the big reason why the Jets are contenders in the AFC is because they're only giving up 20 points per game and 312 yards per game. They're also getting a pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They've had 11 sacks in their last 2 weeks, including 6 against these New England Patriots in that game in New York or in New Jersey. So I'm going to take the under here. We have a very, very low total, but this is a very tough series. I think it's going to be a close game, but not really a lot of value, in my opinion, on the spread. So give me the under in this Jets-Patriots ballgame. Next up, we see the Detroit Lions taking on the New York Football Giants. Giants are 3-point favorites. Total is at 46. Now, even though I do think the Giants are the better team compared to the Lions, I actually don't really love this matchup for the Giants. Even though they're at home, I just don't love the way that this defense is playing, especially against the run. And the Detroit Lions have a very good offensive line, whether they've got DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams in the backfield. They've been able to run the football pretty effectively this season, 4.8 yards per carry on the year. And they're also doing pretty well in the passing game with Jared Goff having a lot of time to make decisions. They've only been sacked 3 times in the last 3 weeks. So, you got the Detroit Lions here coming off a big win, a pretty emotional win. So you have to worry about a little bit of a letdown spot after that win over the Bears on the road. But, the New York Giants are giving up 5.3 yards per carry to the Texans last week. They didn't do too bad against the Seahawks against the run the week prior, but Geno Smith had a really good game in the passing game for Seattle. Then the week before, 6.8 yards per carry to the Jaguars, 8.8 to the Ravens. I think the Lions are going to be able to run the football pretty consistently in this game, and I think that's why we see a pretty high total here at 46. I like the over in this one. I think both offenses show up. We know the Lions' defense is not very good, but if this is a shootout, I think it benefits the Lions. They've seen a lot of those type of games this season, including last week against the Bears, and I think they're going to have a shot to win this one outright, but I'll take those 3 points with the road dog. I think they have a fighting chance in this one. So give me the Lions here, plus the points. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Rams taking on the New Orleans Saints. Saints are laying 4 points. Total is at 39. I'm going to go with the contrarian play on this one. It's obviously not my favorite game on the board right now, but I think the total set just a little bit too low because of what we saw last week from both of these teams offensively. And really for the Rams, it's been most of the season where the offense has struggled. Injuries have played a role into that, but I don't really trust the Saints defense to make consistent stops. And we've seen that in the last couple of weeks where the Saints defense has struggled down the stretch against the Ravens. Even though it was they only gave up 319 yards and they only gave up 27 points. It really was an uglier game than that, in my opinion. The Saints really didn't have much of a chance in that game, and defensively especially, I think the Rams, if there was a spot where the Rams can rally around some of their backups that are getting a chance to play in this week, Cooper Kupp going to be out for the next 4 weeks at least on the IR. Wouldn't be surprised to see him shut down for the rest of the season. Some guys could step into some starting roles, and this could be a nice breakout spot against a weak defense. And the Saints offense, even though it's been inconsistent, they've shown some moments where they've had 3 games over 400 total yards this season. I think they'll be able to chip in some points in this game as well. So definitely not my favorite game on the board right now. We'll see how it looks at the end of the week, but I'm leaning towards the over here with a contrarian play. In our next game, we see the Chicago Bears taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are 3-point favorites here, and the total is pretty steep at 50 points, and for good reason. Both of these offenses have looked pretty good as of late, but I do think the Bears have the edge just defensively in this game, and I do like the Chicago Bears to have a fighting chance for the outright win. Atlanta's defense has not been very good in the second half of the season, and overall now giving up 400 yards per game, 25 points per game. They're getting virtually no pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They're starting to struggle against the run, which was something they were succeeding in at the beginning of the year, and the secondary has to be considered a bottom 5 secondary and pass defense in the NFL right now. So we saw last week the Carolina Panthers of all teams score 25 points and have over 230 yards rushing, 4.9 yards per carry. That's not what you want to see if you're Falcons defense, and if you're the Falcons defense. And the Chicago Bears, the last 5 weeks have had over 200 rushing yards. They've been able to run the football so well. Justin Fields himself as well, who just broke the single game record for rushing yards by a quarterback a couple of weeks ago against Miami. He had another strong day against the Lions where the Bears overall ran for 7.4 yards per carry. Now the defense didn't do great in that game down the stretch, but even though the Bears lost that one in the end. They still outgained Detroit 408 to 323. I think the Bears are just kind of a different team right now. Even though they lost the last 3 games outright, they just look like a team and a franchise heading in the right direction. I don't like the way the Falcons are playing defensively. Give me the Chicago Bears here, taking those 3 points. Next up, we see the Denver Broncos hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Broncos are 2.5-point favorites. Total is at 41.5. You guys thought that the Rams-Saints game was bad. Here we go, Raiders, Broncos, 2 teams that have been, again, big expectations, have failed to reach all of those, and now we have to watch them in a 4 o'clock Eastern time slot. But, I do think that the Raiders, the big thing for me is I wouldn't want to lay points with either of these teams right now, so that's why I'm just leaning towards the Raiders. Definitely not a game I'm rushing to bet either, similar to that Rams-Saints game. The Raiders have blown so many leads this season. They've looked good at times. They've looked miserable at other times. The Broncos' offense has been miserable basically from the get-go. They've scored only 15 points per game, taking a lot of sacks, including last week 6 sacks allowed, only 313 total yards, and only 65 of those rushing yards. So they're not running the football. They're not having a lot of time in the pocket. Russell Wilson has not been very good. The defense has been fine for Denver, but the offense just nowhere to be seen. One of the worst offenses in the NFL. So to me, I just don't want to lay points with a team that can't consistently score or move the football. So give me the Las Vegas Raiders here, plus the 2.5 points in a lean. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be a 4:25 Eastern start time. And we're going to see the Bengals as 4.5-point favorites. Totals at 41 points. So pretty low total in this game. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. And that's why I think getting more than a field goal with the home team that's already earned the outright win over these Bengals at the beginning of the season. Yes, there was a lot of different players playing in that game in terms of the injuries and the availability of players. But the big thing for Cincinnati is their offensive line has not been very good this season, and we know the Steelers, who just got back T.J. Watt, they're able to get some more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. We saw last week only giving up 186 total yards to the New Orleans Saints. It's not a great offense on paper in New Orleans, but still holding any team to below 200 yards in the NFL, very, very impressive stuff. They only gave up 29 total rushing yards. The offense had 379 total yards. They ran the football very well. Kenny Pickett, I think, is improving as the season continues. Yes, the offensive line has done him no favors this season. He's taken 12 sacks the last 2 weeks, but I think this goes to show you why this total is set so low. I think we're going to see both teams suffer quite a few tackle for losses and sacks in this game. Should run the clock pretty often, but other than the under, I'm leaning towards the Steelers in a close divisional game. That's what I expect here. These two teams do not like each other, and even though the Steelers don't have much of a chance at anything in terms of a postseason spot, this is still a game where they are really going to be up for it against the Bengals team that they'd love to spoil their chances in. The home team in this series has been pretty dominant, even though they lost. The Bengals lost earlier in the year at home. Other than that game, they are 5-2 against the number the home team is in this series. So give me the Pittsburgh Steelers plus the 4.5 points in this one. Next up, we see the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Cowboys are 1-point favorites on the road. Totals at 47.5. To me, this is just a miserable spot for the Minnesota Vikings. Even though they're playing great football, 7 straight wins. The offense has been fantastic. You're coming off back-to-back really emotional road victories, especially last week against the Bills, where you're 6.5-point underdogs. You look like you're going to lose the game. The Bills have the ball pretty much in victory formation at their own 1-yard line. Josh Allen fumbles. The Vikings pick it up, scoop and score. You take the lead in the final seconds, but you gave too much time to Josh Allen, who finds the game-tying field goal. You go to overtime and you find the win there. Just an unbelievable game. And, now you have to go back home and take on a really tough and I would say frustrated Cowboys team is coming off a loss themselves against the Green Bay Packers, where they outgained Green Bay. They had 2 touchdown lead in the second half, but they blew it. They lost the game in overtime. But they've been playing good football. Even though this offense on paper only scoring 23 points per game, a lot of that was with Cooper Rush. Dak Prescott in the offense looks real strong, running the football well. They're having a good success in the passing game. The defense as of late hasn't been as strong. I will say, last week against Green Bay, they gave up 5.3 yards per carry. They struggled against the run against the Bears a couple of weeks ago, but they're still getting good pressure on opposing quarterbacks. I think that's going to be a big issue for Kirk Cousins in this game. We've seen him struggle when he is pressured, especially in big-time games like this one. So I don't really like this spot for Minnesota. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys here on the money line or just lay the point with the road team. Next up, it's your Sunday Night Football contest on NBC. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I'm seeing some different lines out here. The Chiefs I'm seeing at 6.5 and 7-point favorites. So if you're looking for the Chargers, if you like the underdog in this spot, shop those lines. Try to find that 7. If you like the Chiefs like I do, try to find that 6.5. And I'm going to take the Chiefs here, land the 6.5 points on the road. I just think their offense is too much right now. It has been one of the better offenses I've seen really in the last few seasons in the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes is having an unbelievable year. The last 3 weeks, the Chiefs have had over 475 total yards. Mahomes has thrown for over 400 yards in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Kadarius Toney's been a nice pickup for this Chiefs passing game. Travis Kelce's having an unbelievable season. Yes, they don't run the football very consistently, but they don't really have too many rushing attempts on the year in general. They only run it about 20, 25 times a game. Patrick Mahomes in the passing game throws it about 35, 40 times a game. So against this Chargers defense that has not been good against the run or the pass, in my opinion, and a defense that also doesn't get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, I think the Chiefs will be able to score at will in this one. So then it goes down to, can the Chargers keep up offensively? And I do think the Chargers have a good offense. You look at Justin Herbert, I still think he's one of the better young quarterbacks in the league. And I think the Chargers will be able to put up a fight, at least at the beginning offensively. But the fact of the matter is, this is a one-dimensional offense. The passing game is fantastic. The run game, nowhere to be found. Even though the Chargers' offensive line is held up for the passing game, it has not been able to do so for the run game. And Austin Eckler only averaging 3.7 yards per game and 85 rushing yards per game, including last week against San Francisco. They couldn't run the football. I think that's going to be a big issue in this spot against Kansas City, who should be able to score at will. So give me the Kansas City Chiefs here, laying the points. I wouldn't blame you for taking the points. It's a lot of points in a divisional game, and this has been a pretty close series as of late, but I think the Chiefs are just too much. So give me Kansas City laying the points. And in our final game of the week, it's your Monday Night Football contest on ESPN. San Francisco 49ers, Arizona Cardinals. The Niners are laying 8. Totals at 43.5. Now, even though I went with the primetime over for Thursday night's game, I'm going to go with the under in this spot just because I don't think Arizona does anything offensively in this game. They've had back-to-back weeks with under 300 total yards. They're facing a top 3 defense, in my opinion, in San Francisco, and that defense has looked very good the last couple of weeks. You also have a lot of injuries on the Arizona side. Marquise Brown out for the season. Kyler Murray is questionable for this game. So we're going to have to see, who's going to be even playing for this game for Arizona offensively. I don't like their chances. Give me the under in this Niners-Cardinals game to end the week. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 11 of the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your football plays in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can always find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.